Hi, welcome back to another exciting mini project on Spring Boot. We started a new series, Beginner Spring Boot Project. In case if you missed the part 1, I'll drop a link in the description section of this video. Go ahead and check that video. In this video, we are going to create another exciting mini project that every Java developer should create this project once in their lifetime. Especially if you are a beginner, college graduate, or even if you are searching for the job, you should create this application because you will learn a lot of things. You will learn how to connect to the database. You will learn how you can create the view templates. Also, you will learn how you can create the styles using Bootstrap and CSS. Let's get started. The project that we're going to create is to-do list. It's a very simple application. Probably you will be creating the same project in other languages, other programming languages as well. So in this project, we are going to use the Spring framework. Also, we will use MySQL database, and we will use Spring Data JPA, and we will use Bootstrap, and we will use Bootstrap icons. Okay, let's get started. The application is started on the port localhost 8080. We have this nice, beautiful landing page. In this landing page, the user can enter the to-dos, and also he can update the to-do and delete the to-do. Let's go ahead and enter the first to-do. In case if the user did not add the entry in this text box, and if he directly try to add the to-do, he will get the validation error message, please fill in this field. So let's add buy milk and hit enter. A nice radio button with a text and a delete icon, which will create the to-do. And let's add one more. Go to movie, and you can see we have this nice to-dos. So let's go ahead and one more to-do we can add. Call mom. Okay. So now from here we can update the to-do and delete the to-do. So let's say if I have already completed the to-do for going to a movie, just click on this. It will complete the task, and you can delete it if you want. That's it. And you can also click the another to-do that will complete the to-do with a strike on the text. Alright, this is a simple application, but you will learn a lot of things. You will learn how we can connect to the MySQL database using the data JPA, and you will learn how we can create the Thymeleaf templates and how we can add the Bootstrap. All those things you are going to learn. And also one more thing, let's say I'm going to add more to-dos. So let's add 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. You can see we got this nice scroll bar. It will not occupy the entire web page. Instead, it is going to add a scroll bar if we added more items to it. Alright, this is the project that we are going to build. This project is completely beginner friendly. Alright, let's get started. The first step is to create the Spring Boot project. In order to create the Spring Boot project, we can use the Spring Initializer, which is an online web tool. Navigate to start.spring.io. Inside this, we need to enter the project metadata details. We need to select the project type. I will select as Maven. You can also create the Gradle project, and the language, the programming language, we're going to use Java. The Spring Boot version, at the time of this recording, the latest and stable version is 3.4.5. The Spring Initializer automatically selects the latest version, the latest and stable version. I'm gonna keep it as it is. Next, we need to enter the group ID. Feel free to change the group ID, the artifact ID, to do app. You can also change the artifact ID as well. And the project name, I'm gonna leave as it is, to do app, the default name which is provided by the Spring Initializer. The description, you can change it as per your needs. And the package name, it is going to create the package name, the combination of group ID and the artifact ID. I'm gonna leave as it is. And the packaging jar, the Java version, I have installed Java 21. I'm going to select 21. The dependencies, let's add the web dependency, and we need the server-side template engine. Let's use the Thymeleaf. Also, I will add the JPA, I'm going to add the Lombok and DevTools. Also, I'm going to add the MySQL driver. Now click on this generate. This is going to download the project in a zip file, and we can also store in a specific folder. I'm going to store that in a downloads folder. Click save. It is going to download the file. Next, let's open this zip file, extract it, and open this inside the IDE. I have opened the project inside the IntelliJ IDEA. You can also use the other IDEs such as Visual Studio Code or even STS or Eclipse. Feel free to use the IDE whichever you are comfortable with. Now let's open the pom.xml, and this is the Maven dependency file. We have added the JPA dependency, Thymeleaf, web, DevTools, MySQL connector, Lombok, and this starter test dependency. It is added by Spring Initializer automatically. We can remove this. Once if you remove that, inside the test folder we have this default test class. Go ahead and delete this also. Next, for the Lombok, I'm going to add the version. The latest version is 1.18.38, and also I'm going to copy the same version. Inside this annotation processor paths, I'll add the version for Lombok and reload the Maven changes. Okay, so now we have added the dependencies and also we have added the version as well. Next, let's close this. Let's open the resources under the application.properties file. This is the property file where we can configure the application by adding the properties. Inside this, we are going to add the database informations. Let's add the properties one by one. We are going to add the MySQL URL, username, and password. Also, we also need to tell JPA how we are going to create the tables. First, let's add the URL, the MySQL URL, spring.datasource.url. In case if you are looking for these properties, you can find it inside the documentation. Let's open the browser and search for Spring Boot application.properties. Select the first link, common application properties, and in the right hand side you can see these properties have been divided into multiple sections. The one we are interested is data properties. These contains related to databases or data source. Click on this and you can read these properties one by one. I have already familiar with the properties. I'm going to directly add it. You can search for datasource.url, and these are the properties that we are going to add. The JDBC URL for the database. We also need to add the username and the password. Let's open the IntelliJ and we can add the data source URL, JDBC : MySQL / localhost. We are connecting to the database which is running on our local system. In case if you are connecting to the remote URLs, we have to change this localhost to we have to provide the remote URL. The default port is 3306 / we need to add the database name. Of course, we haven't created any database. We're going to create it in just a bit. Just add the database name, which is Todo app DB. Next, we also need to add the database username and password. Spring.datasource.username. In my case, root is the username. Feel free to change it if you have created a separate users for your database. Let's add the password, spring.datasource.password. I will enter the password for my database. These are the database properties. Next, we will add two more properties for the JPA. Spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl auto. We need to tell how we are going to generate the tables. We are going to add the update as the value. This is going to generate the tables whenever we make any changes inside our JPA entity. As soon as we make the changes, it will update the tables. Very first time it will create the tables. From next time onwards, whenever we start the application or whenever we restart the application, it will not make any changes to the database until unless we have modified the schema or we have modified our entity. Let's add the one more property, spring.jpa show SQL. I'm going to set this to true. This is going to display the SQL queries whenever we make any database operations. Save this. These 5 properties, we are going to add it inside the application properties. Next, open the Project Explorer. We need to create the templates. Inside the templates folder, let's create a HTML file, index.html. In order to use the Thymeleaf attributes inside this HTML template, we need to add the namespace. To get the namespace, let's go to the browser and search for Thymeleaf namespace and select the first link. And if you scroll down, if you keep scrolling down, you will see the namespace, and this is the one we need to add it inside our HTML file. Just copy this and add this namespace. Now we can use the Thymeleaf attributes using this keyword th. I can just change the title to do application. Inside this, let's add the h1 tag to do application. I'll just add this text. Next, let's create the controller. Open the Project Explorer and inside the default package, create a new package, controller. Inside this, create a new class to do controller. It is just a naming convention that every developer follow to add the controller, appending the controller for the classes. If you are creating the controller, then we are going to add the controller for the classes as a suffix. And we will also add the annotation, controller annotation, because this class will act as a controller. It is going to accept the HTTP requests from the browser. And inside this, we are going to create the methods. Every Java class contains methods, and this class also contains the methods, but the methods which contains the controllers are called as handler methods. And these handler methods has the mapping, and we need to add those mappings. First, let's create the method. I'm going to add the method name as show homepage. This is the method, and we need to add the return type. This is going to return a view name, which is nothing but the template name. Now we have to tell what kind of HTTP request the user can make for this method. Basically, this method is mapped to a HTTP request, and that HTTP request is get method or a post method that we have to specify here. In this case, this is going to be a HTTP get request. That is why I'm going to add the get mapping annotation. If it is a post method, then we can add the post mapping annotation. Inside this, we need to provide the URI path. This URI path is nothing but the name after the URL. For example, if the URL is localhost 8080, after this URL, whatever we add after the slash, that we're going to call it as a URI path. And for this handler method to execute, we need to provide the URI path. And in my case, it's slash, because this method will be act as a base URL or a base method, where whenever we make any request to the base URL, it is going to execute this handler method. We can also add multiple URI paths. This handler method can be executed for multiple URI paths. In order to add that, we are going to use the curly braces, and within that, with a comma separated, we will add the URI paths. / home. For all these URI paths, this method will be executed. Inside this, as of now, we are not going to do anything. We're going to just render the template. So return, we need to tell what is the template name. In my case, the template name which we have created as index.html. So we just need to add the view name, the template name without extension, which is index. That's it. Let's save this. And I'm going to start the application, open the project explorer. Before that, we also need to configure the DevTools because we have added the DevTools. Let's go to the IntelliJ settings. And if you go to the build, execution and deployment inside this compiler, select this option build project automatically. Click apply, click OK. So this will configure the DevTools. Next time whenever we are started the application, we don't have to stop and restart it after we make any changes. So let's start the application. Open the main class. You will find the run option here. Just click on this, click run. This will start the application on the port localhost 8080. The Tomcat started on the port 8080. Let's open the browser. Navigate to localhost 8080. We should see the text to do application. Perfect. Now, what we need to do is let's add a Google font to our application to customize the font. Let's open the browser and search for Google Urbanist. So this is the font that we are going to use. Click on this. Click on this get font and select the get embed code. And we are going to use the web version and select the link option. Select all these 3 link options and open the index.html. Just below the title, paste it. Now we have just added the Google font to our application, but we haven't applied it. In order to apply this font, we need to create a new CSS file inside the static folder. Let me expand this. Create a new directory. I'm going to call this CSS. Inside this CSS, I'm going to create a new style sheet, style.css. Inside this, I'm going to apply the font family for the entire application. And I will add the font, which is Urbanist. If it is not available, then we are going to use the sans serif. Let's save this. Now we have to reference this style sheet inside our index.html. Just below this link, we are going to create a new link. We're going to reference to the style.css. We need to provide the path, which is /css/style.css. Let's save this. We also need to reference to the Bootstrap library. Let's go to the browser, search for Bootstrap, select the first link, click on this read docs. The latest version is 5.3.6. Click on this download, scroll down. You will see the CDN links, the CSS file and the JS file. So copy the CSS and inside the index.html, just above this style.css, let's add the or reference to the Bootstrap CSS file. So let me bring this to the next line, and save this. We can also reference to the JS library as well if you want. So let's copy this just above the closing body tag. Let's reference to the JS tag. Save this. Now let's go to the browser, reload the web page. We should see the font family applied to this text. Also, the bootstrap styling has been applied to this text. Now we can start creating the Java classes. Before that, I'm just going to, let's open the the style.css. Inside this, what I'll do is I'm going to add few styles to this CSS file. I have already copied it to clipboard. I'm going to just paste it. You can find this CSS in the description section of this video. I don't want to type it because that will take a lot of time, and this video is not designed to teach you the CSS. I believe that you're already aware of all these concepts. I'm just going to add these styling to our style.css. We can start using these CSS classes inside our index.html. Okay, next let's open the project explorer. We need to create the entity. So inside the base package, create a new package, entity, and inside this package let's create a new JPA entity, todo, or we can call it as todo entity. Inside this, first we need to add the necessary fields in order to store the todo details. We are going to add the ID, which is of type long, and title, the todo title we are going to add, this is of type string, and also we need to add the Boolean property to track whether the todo is completed or not completed. Let's add Boolean completed. We need to add the necessary annotations. We will add the entity annotation from JPA. We will also add table annotation. We can provide the table name. I will call this, I'm going to map this to a table with the name todos. Let's add the data annotation. All args constructor and no args constructor. We'll also add the builder annotation. We can remove these unused imports. We will also add the ID annotation. If we add this ID annotation, this field becomes the primary key column. Generated value annotation. We need to tell how we are going to generate the values for the ID column. Strategy, generation type identity. And for the title, let's add the column annotation. We can add the column definitions. I'm going to add this nullable to false, and I'll set this unique to true. This todos should be unique and it should not accept the null values. With this, let's save the file. Now we can create the repository. Open the project explorer. Inside the base package, create a new package. I'm going to call this repository. Inside this, create a new interface, todo repository. This is going to extend the JPA repository. We need to provide the JPA entity type, which is todo entity, and primary key type, which is long, and save this. Once we create this repository, we can call the JPA methods to perform the CRUD operations like create, read, update, and delete. Now we need to create the controller. We have already created the controller. Inside the controller, first we need to inject the repository. In order to call the repository methods, we need to create an object of the repository, but instead of creating the object, we are going to just inject it. That is how we are going to do it in the Spring framework. We will not create the objects, instead we are going to inject it. I'm going to add the required args constructor, and let's create a field to do repository. Let's call this to do repository. Now we can make use of this to do repository to read the to-dos and create the to-do and update the to-do and delete the to-do. Now what I'll do is, when we open the template, the index file when we rendered, we need to display the to-dos. As of now in our database there are no entries, but let's actually fetch from the database and we will add few entries into the database manually. In order to call the database entries, in order to read the database values, we will make use of this to do repository and we will call the find all method. Once we retrieve the database entries, we need to add it to the model. If we add it to the model, then from the model we can access it inside our template. In order to add the model, first we need to inject the model, and inside this method, for the method parameter, we are going to inject the model. Let's call this model. Now we can make use of the model reference variable to call the methods, which is add attribute. This will take two parameters, the key value pair. The key we can provide any name. I will call this to-dos, and the value we are going to call this find all method. Now once we call the find all method, the result what we are going to get from this find all, we are going to directly add it to the to-dos, and we are going to directly add it to the model with a name to-dos. Now using this to-dos, we can access it inside our index.html. Let's save this. Now let's open the index.html. Before that, let's open the database. I'm going to open the database. I'm going to create a new SQL file, and let's create the database. Okay, we already have this database to do app db. I'm going to just drop this. Looks like I have created it previously, so just drop this. I'm going to create a new database, create database to do app db. Let's verify it with application.properties file once. To do app db, to do app db. Okay, fine. Now I'm going to execute this. So select this query and execute this. A database has been created. Refresh this schemas. We should see the new database to do app db. Now first what I will do is, let's go back to the index.html. Before we make any changes inside this index.html, what I'll do is I'm going to just stop this and I'm going to restart the application. And you can see the JPA has created the table with the name to-dos. Now we can go back to our MySQL database, and first of all, let's select this database. To select the database, we can use the use command. Now the database has been selected. Inside this, if you expand this, you will see the table, which is to-dos. Right now, there are no records. We can verify it. Select star from to-dos, and you can see there are no records inside this table. Let's actually enter few records so that we can display those to-dos inside our index.html. Let's write the insert query, insert into the table name, let's add the columns, title, completed. Let's add the values. First to do, I'll set this to true. I will add one more record. Second to do, I'll set this to false. Now select these two entries or the commands and execute this, and we can now execute the select query to see whether the table contains the records or not. You can see there are two entries in the table. Now we can go back to our index.html. Inside this index.html, we will make use of the to-do model to iterate over the list, and we can display it here. Inside this, first of all, what I'll do is I'm going to create a div. I'm going to get rid of this heading tag, and I'm going to create a div with a class to-do container. We have already added a styling to this to-do container. If you go to the style.css, you can see to-do container we have already added. Inside this, I'm going to create a heading tag with h4, and inside this I'm going to add the icons. In order to add the icons, we need the Bootstrap icons library to reference it here. Let's go back to our browser and open the Bootstrap, and if you click on this icons, we can access the Bootstrap icons. Click on this install, you will get the CDN link. Just copy this CDN link, and below this reference to the Bootstrap min.css, we can reference to the icons.css as well. Now inside this heading tag, we can make use of the Bootstrap icons. Let's add the text to-do list. Now save this, and if you go to the browser, reload this, you will see this background black for this to-do container, and we are adding this icon with the text to-do list. Next, just below this, we need to create the form to enter the to-do. Inside this form, let's create a text box. We need to add the name, title. We don't need this ID. Instead, let's add the placeholder. Add your task. Let's add the Bootstrap classes, form control. We will also add the custom CSS class, which is to do input, and I'm going to make this as required, which is a mandatory field. And for this form, I will also add few classes: flex, margin bottom 4 and margin top 4. Let's save this. Let's go to the browser and reload this. We should see this input text box with a placeholder, add your task. Now, just below this input text box, I'm going to create a button with a class btn add. Let's add the text, and I will also add the plus symbol within this span tag, and save this. Now if you go to the browser, just reload this, we should see this input text box with a button add. Next, just below this form, I'm going to display a message when the list is empty. Create a div. Inside this, I'm going to add the text no to do found and save this. And if you reload the web page, we should see the text no to do found. But I want to display this only if the list is empty. So for that, we can use the Thymeleaf if attribute. We can make use of the utility method, which is lists.isEmpty. To this we can pass the list. If you remember, we are adding the list to the model, and the model, for the model we have added the key as to-dos. Now we can access this inside our index.html. To-dos. And if it is empty, then only we are going to display this message, no to-dos found. For this, let's add the classes text center, text muted. These are the Bootstrap classes. Save this, and if you reload the web page, okay, we are not able to see those text because there are entries inside our database. Let's go to the database, and if you can see, we have few entries in the database, so that is why. So what I'll do is I'm going to just delete these entries, and if you go to the browser and reload this, now you can see the message no to-dos found because the list is empty. Alright, I'm going to just re-execute these queries. Okay, now let's reload this. Okay, let's go back to our index.html. Just below this, I'm going to create a div with a custom CSS class to-do list. Inside this, we need to iterate over the list. So let's create a div, and we can make use of the Thymeleaf each attribute to iterate over the list. In order to access the list, we are going to use to-dos with the curly braces. And next, each time when we iterate over this to-dos, this list, if we iterate over, we get a single to-do object, and we're going to store that in a temporary variable called to-do. Using this variable, we can access the various properties like title, completed, ID. Now I'm going to add class which is to-do item. This is also a custom class. Inside this, let's create a div with a class flex, align items center, and inside this, I'm going to make use of the anchor tag. Inside this anchor tag, I'm going to display the icon using the Bootstrap. So let's use Bootstrap icons, and I want to add the classes dynamically for this icon. So for that, I'm going to use the Thymeleaf class append. I can access the completed property from this to-do object, to-do.completed, and if this to-do.completed is true, I'm going to add one more class. So for that, I'm going to use the ternary operator. If it is true, I will add the class which is completed. Instead, not completed, I'm going to add Bootstrap check circle fill. This is the class that I'm going to add. Also, I'm going to add one more class which is check icon. and if the completed is false, I'm going to add circle unchecked. Basically we wanted to track the checked and unchecked. So for that, if the completed is true, then we know that the user is already completed. At the time we are going to add these classes to add a different icon, and if the completed is false, then we know that the user is not completed that to do, and for that we're going to add the unchecked icon. So for that we're going to use this class. Unchecked icon, and inside, okay, also for this anchor tag, I'm going to, we don't need to add any classes for this, but just save this and let's go to the browser, and I'm going to reload this. You can see we are seeing two records in the database. We have two records, and one record is completed is true and another record completed is false. That is why for the completed we are seeing this icon, and for the not completed record we are seeing this unchecked icon. Now we need to display the text, the title. I'm going to use the span tag. We can make use of the Thymeleaf text attribute, todo.title, and save this. And if you reload this, we should see this text. Now we have to add styling to this text. So I'm going to add the classes dynamically. So let's add the class append, todo.completed. If the todo.completed is true, then we're going to add a class completed. Otherwise we're not going to add anything, just add an empty string. And we will also add a class which is todo text. This is a custom CSS class. Let's save this, and if you go to the browser and reload this, you can see for the completed to do, we can able to see it is striked out for the text, and for the incomplete to do, we are just displaying the text. Okay, next we need to add the delete icon. So just below, after this div tag, I'm going to create an anchor tag. Let's add the Bootstrap classes. Actually we're going to add a custom class which is delete button, and I'm going to add the icon, the Bootstrap icon, trash3. Save this, and if you go to the browser, reload this, we should see these delete icons which is just next to our to-dos. Alright, so now we have completed the designing part as well as we are displaying the to-dos inside our index.html. Next we need to add a functionality to adding a new to-dos and updating the to-do and deleting the to-do. Let's do it one by one. Let's open the controller. Inside this, create a new handler method, public. This is going to return the view name string, and add is the handler method name, and we are going to sending the data to the server, and that will be the post request, and this handler method is mapped to the post request handler method. So I'm going to add the post mapping, the URI path /add. We're going to receive the title from the parameter, so we can use the request param. We're going to add it to the variable title which is of type string. Inside this we need to create the to do object. We can use the builder pattern, to do entity, builder. Let's set the title completed. I'll set this to false. And I'm going to call the build method. This will give us the to-do entity. Now we can use this new to-do to save it into the database. Let's use the service, not the service, the repository, to do repository dot save. To this save method, we can pass the new to do. And once we saved into the database, we need to redirect back to the same page and we need to refresh the list. For that, we can make use of this handler method, show homepage. But we cannot directly call this show homepage like this. Instead, we are going to use the redirect. So return redirect. We need to provide the URI path, which is at least the empty string or slash or home, anything we can provide. I'm going to add slash. Save this. And now let's go to the index.html. We need to add the action attribute. So for the form, let's use the Thymeleaf action attribute. Slash add and save this. Now if you go to the browser and just refresh this, and now let's add a new task, third to do, hit enter. Okay, we get this error, that is a get is not supported. Actually we should need to add the method, because here inside our controller we are mapping it to a post mapping. So here let's add the method post and save this. Now let's go back and now let's add a new to do, third to do, hit enter. You can see it will automatically add it to the list, and fourth to do, and you can see. Let me actually increase the font, the browser size. Okay. Alright, now we completed the functionality for adding the new to do. Let's also add the functionality for updating the to do. Let's go to the to do controller. Inside this, let's create a new handler method. Public. This is going to return a view name. So let's return string update. This is going to be a get mapping. From the browser, we are going to make a get request. The URI path slash update slash. We're going to pass the ID in the path variable. We need to make use of the path variable to accept the ID. Path variable, we are going to bind it to the variable ID, which is of type long. And inside this, first we need to get the to do using this ID. For that, we can make use of the repository, to do repository dot find by ID. To this we can pass the ID, and this is going to return an optional. We may get a to do, we may not get to do. So in order to handle that, we are going to add or else throw, and we're going to pass a supplier, new runtime exception, to do not found. We can attach the ID and we can receive the entity, the to do entity. I can call this existing entity or existing to do. Once we get the to do, we need to set the completed property, existing to do dot set completed. I'm going to set this to true, and we can save this existing to do back to database. To do repository dot save existing to do, and we need to refresh the list, so we can make use of the redirect save this. Now inside our index.html, we need to add the Thymeleaf href attribute. So let's make use of the URI /update/ we need to pass the ID dynamically. So I'm going to create a variable, and to this variable we need to pass the ID dynamically. So we need to pass the name of the parameter, which is ID, is equal to, and we can pass the ID todo.id. This todo contains the ID, completed, and title, and I'm going to access it using the expressions, the Thymeleaf expressions. Let's save this. Now let's go to the browser and reload the web page. Now I'm going to select the update the third to do as completed. Click on this, you can see it is completed, and I'm going to select the fourth one as well. Click on this, you can see it is completed. Okay, now we can work on this deletion part, deleting the to do. Let's go to the controller. I'm going to create a new handler method, public. This is going to return string delete. This is going to be a get mapping /delete/ we need to pass the ID, which record we need to delete, so or which to do we need to delete. We are passing the to do ID, and we are going to use the path variable to accept the ID. We are going to bind it to the variable ID, which is of type long. Now we can make use of the find by ID method. So I'm going to just copy this, and once we get the existing to do, we can call the repository method to do repository.delete, and to this delete we can pass the existing to do. And after this we need to refresh the list, so we can use the redirect and save this. Now inside our index.html, we need to add the Thymeleaf href attribute. Let's add the URI path /delete/ we need to pass the ID. This is going to be a path variable, and we need to pass the value for this. We can make use of the expression. Before that we need to provide the variable name, which is ID is equal to todo.id, and save this. Now if you go to the browser, reload this, now we can delete the to-dos. I'm going to delete the third to-do. Click on this, you can see it is deleted. Now let's delete the second to-do, which is incomplete to-do. Delete this, you can see it is deleted. You can also delete the fourth to-do, it is deleted. And if you delete the last one, you will see this message, no to-dos found. You can add a new to-do. Awesome. And if you try to add a new to-do, and it will ask you to enter the value, which is please fill in this field. Awesome. Alright, now we have completed this entire application. We have completed all the functionalities: adding a to-do, deleting a to-do, updating a to-do, and reading the to-do. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something out of this video. In case if you are looking for the source code, you can drop the link. I can drop a link in the description section of this video. Go ahead and grab the source code, and you can try it in your system. This is a beginner friendly project. If you are starting your Spring Boot learning, then this is the very first project that you can attempt, because you will learn how you can interact with the database and how you can create application with server-side template engines, and you will work with a single HTML page, so that you don't have to worry about navigating from one page to the another page.